Yo, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Uptown Parlay Podcast. I am your host, I'm Malik, and I'm here with my main man, Ace. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Malik?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's week 15, NFL week 15, getting ready to get into these picks. A lot of games to get into with you guys, 16 games in total, no more buys across the no more buys across the NFL. So we are in what most people call it the home stretch of the NFL season. Fantasy leagues have all wrapped up except Aces. Aces league, he likes to mess with us and run his league all the way into week 18.
Hey,
But unlike it's funny, Ace, because and Little Man agrees with me, and that's why I love to hear it. But it's funny that you have two leagues. One of them, the playoffs start this week. The other one, the playoffs don't start till next week. I don't get
that is
it's
correct.
inconsistency, man. It's inconsistency is bothering me. I'm in
Well,
both.
that league is the one where it's just for trash talk. Although the people who wanted me to charge money for it are all in last place, except one person who's going to barely sneak into the playoffs. They all drafted poorly, but shout out to Belichick yourself. He snuck into the playoffs with the win last week.
Well,
Very interesting stuff.
that was the league I was actually most interested. I started that league 1-6, and I won out. I finished
Yeah.
7-7 and got myself into the playoffs in that league. So I was actually really proud of myself coming back
Huh?
there. But all right, so I'm gonna let's go ahead and get started. We are now it is now Thursday evening. We're watching the exciting, riveting, rain-filled game between the 49ers and the Rams on Thursday Night Football. Right now it's 3-3 in the second quarter. So if you're watching that, hopefully you made some picks and you're enjoying this game. And hopefully there's some points get scored so you guys can get some numbers for your fantasy team. But we will start with the Commanders at the Saints. Commanders are 8-5 at the 5-8 New Orleans Saints. The spread for this game, and all spreads are just a reminder, all spreads are coming from FanDuel Sportsbook, and all spreads are up to date as of 4 p.m. this afternoon. The Commanders are 7.5-point favorites traveling to New Orleans. The over-under in this game is 43.5. So, couple of quick notes about this game. Washington's coming off of their bye. They looked pretty. They looked pretty good their last game out against Tennessee. They won that game 42-19. That was more indicative of how poorly Tennessee is playing, and probably a little less about Washington. Washington before that they had lost 3 straight: Pittsburgh, Philly, and Dallas. So it seems like including that Dallas game, seems like they're still having trouble playing teams that are either at their level or above. And the Saints, although they have a 5-8 record, they're probably a little closer to a team that's in their wheelhouse than the Tennessee teams that's below them. So 7.5-point favorites. Ace, what are you thinking? Commanders at the Saints.
I think the fact that they're at the Saints says a lot. Because they're going to be playing in the dome where there won't be a factor. The Saints are playing well enough to maybe sneak in and get their division. I know that they're 2 games back, but they have not officially been eliminated. And the team
Correct.
leading their division is only 7-6.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's not really impossible. It's just more the fact of, can the Saints win these last couple of games, and they still have a couple of division games left. But I think I did take the Saints because of the hook. I know they're 5-8, but the fact that they're at home, I just think they're going to cover. I don't know. I don't believe they're going to win, but David Carr is having a kind of a disappointing season. Alvin Kamara is going to break 1,000 yards, but the Saints' run defense is so bad. But Brian Robinson can really take advantage. But I just have more faith in. And Kamara's also their leading receiver too. Which is not a great sign, but probably hit a few prop bets on him. They beat the Giants. They're beating the bad teams. They just can't beat any of the good teams. And
Right.
they did also lose to Carolina. So, but
Right. But we'll get to Carolina because Carolina's been feisty these last couple of weeks. So
But
You know,
yeah, I'm taking
they're
the
a tough
Saints. I'm going to
problem.
take that 7.5. It's that hook. So
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah.
it's an interesting hook. I mean, I like Commanders coming off of the bye, resetting some things a little bit. And just a note for you, it doesn't look like Carr is going to actually play in this game. It's probably where the 7.5 is coming from. He injured his hand last in their game last week, and looks like he's also in the concussion protocol. He didn't practice on Thursday, so if he does not play, um, Jake
Going to
Hayner
be Rattler.
is lined
Okay.
up as the starting quarterback, with Rattler being the number two on the depth chart. So that's where it's looking like it's heading for this week. So that might I wasn't not sure if that changes your pick in any way, but that's probably where this 7.5, where this high number is coming from for a home team.
No, because the rookie hasn't thrown a pick yet. So I'm going to lean on that, and I'm going to lean on the fact that they both went to Fresno State. So they're probably, trained in a similar way, and he can't do any worse than Rattler, who has 2 interceptions. So we'll see. He's been in the
Okay.
system a little bit longer. I think he's been on the team since last year, so he should at least know whatever the offensive system is. I think having an interim coach might be hurting their continuity and their play calling a bit, though.
Well, the Riz has actually been doing pretty good. He's actually been doing pretty good for the Saints. I don't know if he's going to get the
The
full time
Riz,
job.
he's got a nickname
That's what
now.
they're calling. As a matter of fact, they're calling him the Rizzler.
No, no, they're not. They're calling that little
Yeah,
kid the Rizzler.
I don't know who that is. They call him the Rizzler too. I heard it on it was the NFL Game Day morning last week.
The
Um,
Rizzler.
yeah, like it's a thing. I mean, because his last name is Rizzo or something like that.
Yes, he's from
Yeah,
Jersey,
yeah.
as they said
But
5,900 times last week when they were playing the Giants.
I'll take the Commanders to cover. I think if Carr was playing in this game, I would leaning more towards the Saints because I do like that hook. Not locking this in as a best bet, but I definitely think that the Commanders coming off their bye should be able to get this cover and keep things a little bit more interesting in the NFC East, where Philadelphia seems to be running away with it. So they're going to keep themselves in the wild card chase. All right, next up we have the Bengals at the Titans. Bengals are 5-8, coming off their victory last week against the Dallas Cowboys in what was probably one of the most it was a very interesting game, very intriguing game, and one of the weirdest endings to a football game that you could possibly see. Um, and meanwhile, the Titans have lost two straight. They lost last week to Jacksonville, 10-6, and are coming into this game hosting at 3-10. The Bengals are 5-8. Bengals are still not mathematically eliminated from playoff competition, but it's all but written for them. Playing in that difficult AFC North. Meanwhile, the Titans are mathematically eliminated. They can't do anything coming out of the cellar. They're tied with Jacksonville with the worst record in their division at 3-10. This game has the Bengals favored on the road by 4.5 points, and the over/under is 46.5. I'll kick us off here. I really like what I've seen from the Bengals offensively over the last few weeks. Well, really over the last, for the most part of the season. Their biggest problem is they can't defend anybody, and they haven't been able to get any stops. And so, their games get to the high numbers pretty frequently. Cincinnati's been what have they this so far? They're 7-6 against the spread, despite being 5-8 on the season, and that's probably because any games that they're not favored in, they've found ways to score enough points to kind of hold the number. Meanwhile, Tennessee is 2-11 against the spread this season. They can't score on anybody, and when they do score, when they do score, their defense isn't able to make the change. But I do like Tennessee's defense to keep things relatively close early, but I think the Bengals pull away late and win this game by at least 6 points. So I'm going to take the Bengals and I'm going to lock this in as my first lock of the week. Ace, what about you?
I agree with you completely. I foolishly took the Titans to cover last week because Mac Jones was going to be starting, and I knew that they would be able to prepare for him. And also, essentially, all their wide receivers are hurt, but all they needed was one touchdown from Tank Bigsby, and I think it was like 3 field goals or 2 field goals, and that was it. That's
One
all
field
they.
goal. They
That's all
lost
they.
10-6. Yeah, it was
They lost
10-6.
10-6. So
Yeah.
one field goal. So they
Yeah.
were losing 6-3, and then they got a touchdown, and then that was it. Not
Yeah.
much of a barn burner. I was watching that on Red Zone, and I was like, this is, they can't even muster a touchdown. So I'm not going to be trusting the Titans for the rest of the year. They're not in tanking mode, but they should be, as should the Bengals. But Bengals technically are not eliminated from playoff standing, so they're going to beat the brakes off of that. I would actually tease this line up to -7, so I think they're going to beat them by more than a touchdown. Crazy as that sounds. But if
So,
Cincinnati wins out and it breaks their way, they can still steal that last playoff spot from them.
yeah, they need some things to break their way on the Denver side, and then probably with the Chargers as well. They'll need one of those two teams to drop out for them
But
to
they get to play Denver
get
too,
back
so
in.
that also helps.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, next up we got the Dolphins at the Texans. The Dolphins are 6-7, going to Houston, play against the Texans at 8-5. Houston's coming off of their bye. It was 6 bye weeks. You guys are gonna hear me say this pretty often. There were 6 byes last week in the NFL, in the quote unquote bye-nado that everybody likes to call it. I love the fact that I'm shout out. This is an early shout out to the NFL for making the bye-nado like week 14, which is usually the most important week for everybody in fantasy football because anybody that's trying to get into the playoffs, it's like the biggest week of the season for them, and they put 6 teams on a bye that week. So thank you to the NFL for doing that. A reverse shout out to y'all. Anyhow, Houston was on the bye. They're coming off of a win against Jacksonville prior to the bye. Meanwhile, Miami has won. They bounced back with a win against the Jets. Was that game in overtime? I don't remember if that was an overtime game or
That
not.
was
Yeah,
an
it was an
overtime
overtime.
game.
Yeah, that was that
Yes.
overtime win. They came back because the Jets were up, pretty handily in that game, and they came all the way back, tied it up, and then won in overtime, bouncing back after their loss against the Packers. Because before that they had won 3 straight. So Miami right now is 5-8 against the spread this season. 6-7, and 6-7 is the record that they're sitting at. And Houston, hopefully, they're getting a little bit healthier. Things are making a little bit more sense to them coming off of their bye. They're at 8-5. The Texans right now are 2.5-point favorites at home, and the over under here is 46.5. So Ace, I'm coming over to you. What are you thinking? Dolphins at Texans.
I like the Dolphins getting 3. Uh, this is going to be an issue for the Texans because they're going to be without Azeez Al-Shahir, who's one of their starting middle linebackers. So that team, they're going to play aggressive as usual, but the middle of the field is going to be open. So Jonnu Smith, I expect him to be getting a lot more passes his way. And it looked like Tyreek Hill was clearly healthy for the first time in a long time last week. The Jets weren't able to cover them well, and they're just dealing with a lot of injuries in Houston. They got their bye week at the right time. Christian Harris, their middle linebacker, is going to be out. Like one of their backup DNs is going to be out. So unless their pass rush is really, really getting there, I don't see how they're going to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback or on Tua. So I'm going with the Dolphins, but this is not a game I'm actually going to be betting this week. But I'm picking the Dolphins because they're getting. I would tease it up to 3.5 if you can. Buy that half a point. And they make a huge difference.
I'm going the other way here. I like the Texans this week. This is pretty much a must win, and must win. Not for the division's sake because they pretty much got a good handle on the division. Even though India is 2 games behind them, but they're 2-0. They're undefeated against them. They swept them this season. So, but one thing that the Dolphins haven't been able to do, even with, when Tua was out and now Tua's back, is they don't run the football very well. They don't do a lot with their running game, so they use a lot of the screen game and the short yardage passes to kind of get things rolling from that perspective. And Houston is really good against that. Houston still has Petrie. They still have some speed on the line at the linebacker position, even with Al-Shaair out. And they should be able to hold things down at the very least, prevent those explosives that are prevalent in the Dolphins offense. And on the other side, the Dolphins defense hasn't really, wowed me over the last couple of weeks. They gave up 26 points to the Jets, whose offense had been inept for, a long period of time coming into that game. And expect to see the Texans and C.J. Stroud and those boys, start to pick things up. They got that week back. Nico Collins is now, 3 weeks removed from, his return. So, I expect to see that offense starting to click a little bit better. And the fact that the Texans are at home and it's, 2.5, 3 points. I like the home favorite here, giving points to a Dolphins team that I think is playing a little bit that where their record is not showing that they're like a middle of the pack team, but they're really not, because they don't beat teams that are good. They always beat teams that are bad or below them. They don't beat teams that are good. So going to the Texans in that situation, I like them. I like the Texans here. No lock, but I do like the Texans on this one. All right, next, the 12-1 Kansas City Chiefs going to Cleveland to play the Cleveland Winstons. I'm going to call them the Cleveland Jameis Winstons because he's the only reason to watch the Cleveland Browns right about now. He's been the most entertaining person in the NFL, playing for a 3-10 team. He's probably the most interesting thing, interesting player in this game, period, because KC's been pretty lackadaisical. Some may call him boring. I've been calling them efficient, but they just kind of go come out and win when they need to. They got to win by 2. They got to win by 3. They've won their last 2 games by the exact same score. They beat the Chargers 19-17, and then they beat the Raiders 19-17 over the last 2 games. But this team just knows how to win, and they've been doing it at a high rate. So coming into this game, they are this is the interesting thing, right? The Chiefs are a 4 to 4.5 point favorite, depending on your book. They're a 4 to 4.5 point favorite going to the 3-10 Browns. And I think this tells you more about, what Vegas and folks feel about the Chiefs and the way that they've been winning football games than it does about the Browns and the way that they've been losing football games. The Chiefs, while 12-1 on the season, they're 4-8 against the spread. And they've lost their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games against the spread over the course of the season. So Vegas is really treating them like the like the spoilers that they are. And they're holding them at a 4 to 4.5 point favorite here. So Chiefs at the Browns. Ace, what do you think? And I think this is just a really, really weird line given the records for both these teams.
I am looking towards the over. Kareem Hunt, and I'm looking towards the over on this one. I'm looking towards Cleveland. Kareem Hunt and what's his name? Not Galinda. Good lord, can't remember his name right now, but he's coming back from injury. Isaac
Pacheco.
Pacheco is working his way back from injury, and they're splitting carries still because they want to make sure that Pacheco is healthy for the playoffs because they're going to need him to be able to run the ball. Cleveland's run defense is actually pretty good. That's how they were able to steal that win against Pittsburgh. They were able to shut down the Rams. They have very good athletic corners. They still have a really good pass rush because they got Miles there. Whether their offense turns over the ball or not, that's really going to be the deciding factor. But I could easily see them losing this game by a field goal again, which would give them. They may even put a scare on people to possibly win it because it's at home. And the weather near the Great Lakes, like Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit, that entire area, whoever's playing outside is going to be feeling that wind and going to be feeling that snow. The high is going to be 36 degrees wind. So I'm taking Cleveland in a bad weather game to keep it close. If they win 20-17, that would be almost perfect. It would be just under the over 43.5, but it could be 21-24 and just for them. I wouldn't be shocked.
I think everything that you mentioned with respect to the weather and just kind of the way things are being played out, just that's why I kind of lean towards the under here, on this one, just because of the fact that from a weather perspective, it's going to be cold. Both teams will be running the football. The Browns are definitely, I mentioned Jameis Winston earlier and how much he likes to throw the ball all over the yard, but the Browns, by and large, they've always been a running team, handing the ball off to Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford out of the backfield, and trying to use that with the play action pass to get the ball out to their receivers and let them make plays. And KC has been really good against the run this year. They've been a really good run defense the entire season, and they haven't been great against the pass. So I think you're right. This is a Jameis Winston special here. If he's able to be efficient, not turn the ball over, and not put his defense in situations where they have to defend short fields, then I think that bodes really well for the Browns. Keeping this game close and within the number. But if he does turn the football over, if he has a couple of miscues in that respect, then the Chiefs are going to run away with this, and it could get ugly really quickly. I'm with you here. I like the Browns getting 4.5 points. I like the hook here. I think this is the Chiefs have won their last 3 games by 2, 2, and 3 against the Chargers, Raiders, and Panthers. So they have obviously have not been going out there and lighting the scoreboard up. And they don't obviously feel like they have to. They go and they get their wins in whatever fashion, whatever way that they need to. They need to win by 1, they'll win by 1. If they need to win by 7, they'll win by 7. And this is probably a game where they'll, ball control and keep it relatively close, maybe win on the last second field goal. So I like the Browns here to cover the number, and I like the under.
And Jerry
All
Jeudy
right.
has been playing amazing too.
He
I'd like to
has.
point
He
out.
has ever since the change to the new quarterback.
And
He
Kansas
has been
City has
playing well.
had issues with their cornerbacks and also their left tackles. So Myles Garrett will definitely make he's gonna have Mahomes. Mahomes is gonna have his hands. A lot of dump offs to Noah Gray and Travis Kelce.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm don't hold on to that ball. I was watching a video of Myles Garrett's workout, his daily workout routine. It's pretty scary. I wouldn't want that guy chasing me down. All right, on to the next weird line. I guess you can call it a weird line, or maybe Ace, you can tell me if this feels weird to you. The Cowboys, the 5-8 Cowboys, are at the 3-10 Panthers, and the Panthers are favored in this game. They are favored by 2.5 points at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, what's interesting about them, the Panthers specifically, is the Panthers have covered their last, if I remember correctly, they've covered their last 5 games.
Correct.
They have been, they haven't been winning a lot of these games. They're 2-3 in their last 5, but they're covering and they're playing every single game close. They lost to KC by 3 points as a 10.5 point dog. They lost to Tampa Bay by 3 points as a 6.5 point dog, and they lost to Philly last week by 6 points as a 13.5 point dog. So, Carolina, from the scoreboard, but also just if you watch them play, they're a different team than they were, earlier on in the season. And Bryce Young is a different player. He's a different quarterback, and he's playing well. He's playing much better, playing like, the guy that was drafted at a high level, just over a year ago, and that had comparisons to being the baby Mahomes, which I think those were lofty comparisons at the time, and they're probably still very lofty comparisons, but at least he's playing to
Who
his.
actually said that?
Oh, there was definitely comments about that when he was coming out. They talked about
Okay.
his poise in the pocket. They talked about his ability to play off script and to make plays, just make plays with his feet and keep his head down the field and try to, get the ball. And they talked about his arm strength. His arm, he does have a relatively strong arm, for a guy who's, not a very big player. But meanwhile, the Cowboys, as I mentioned earlier, lost on a very, very fluky, muffed punt situation, muffed blocked punt. So the punt was blocked and then it was muffed. A very, very good play turned into a very, very bad one for the Cowboys, and they lost to the Bengals on Monday Night Football in a heartbreaking fashion. So now they come to Carolina and find themselves as 2.5 point dogs. So, Ace, Panthers hosting the Cowboys minus 2.5. 42.5 is the spread. What are you thinking?
Taking the Panthers, and I am thinking the over. I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be able to run all over the Cowboys, and they're going to be getting Rico Dowdell the ball. Because they have J.C. Horn, and I believe the Panthers weren't on the bye last week, right? They actually played. They played Philly. They
Right.
played them
That was
very.
the game. Yeah. They play Philly.
Bryce Young has 7 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's playing much better, but Chuba Hubbard already has like 1,000. And Jonathan Brooks, the rookie who they drafted, messed up his knee, so unfortunately he's out. So Hubbard's going to be getting all the catches. So I'm looking to get Chuba Hubbard up above 100 yards, and I think J.C. Horn can cover C.D. Lamb and kind of neutralize that threat out of, neutralize that coming out of the backfield, not backfield, but I guess out wide. So Carolina may actually get another win, which would hurt them, but in the long run, it shows some growth because they have a little bit more talent. So they're going to be getting better week by week. Adam Thielen has become a huge, and he's a veteran, so he's going to carry them pretty well. And yeah, I think they're going to win. It wouldn't be worse. And J.C. Horn was limited in practice yesterday and also today. But he's considered day to day, but he is practicing in a limited fashion, so I expect this.
Yeah, and on the other side, the Cowboys, C.D. Lamb has been. If you watched the game, last week against Cincinnati, you can tell that he's nursing something with that shoulder injury. He's been, I can't think that happened during the Giants game a few weeks back, not Thanksgiving, but even before that, when he hurt the shoulder, and ever since then he's been favoring it to some degree, which I think has impacted his explosiveness and just his ability to play that reckless style of ball that we've accustomed to him. With him being out and Cooper Rush still being the quarterback of this team, and just me liking the way that the Panthers have played over these last few weeks, and liking the type of games that they've been putting together. I like the Panthers here too. I'm not going to lock them in, but I definitely like them here, covering this number and getting a win against the Cowboys. I know I said earlier in the season I'd never pick the Panthers again, but they've been playing well enough for me to warrant that. I mean, they're playing well enough to warrant them being favored in a game, which I didn't think. Which going into the season, I don't think anybody believed that this game would be Panthers minus 2.5. Let alone both teams being under 500 at this point. So I'll take the Panthers here as well. No lock, but I like them covering this number. Next up, we have the 3-10 bowl, or as I think I'm starting to call it, the Travis. It's either the Travis Hunter Bowl, the Shadur Sanders Bowl, or the Cam Ward Bowl. We have the 3-10 New York Jets going to the 3-10 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jets are 3.5-point favorites here on the road at the Jaguars, and the over/under on this game is a whopping 40.5 points, lowest number of the week here. The Jets, again, I mentioned they're 3-10. Overall, they're 4-9 against the spread. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jaguars at 3-10 are 8-5 against the spread over the course of the season. So, they've been covering numbers pretty well. They did not cover. They've been covering against the spread pretty well. They've covered 6 of their last 7 against the spread. The Jacksonville Jaguars have. So they've been able to keep numbers close, even though they've been largely the underdog in most of these situations. So Jets, 3.5-point favorites over the Jags. Ace, what are you thinking?
I am locking in the Jets on this one. I think they're going to beat the brakes off of Jaguars. The Jaguars aren't really playing for much. They just didn't want to lose that game last week because it was a division game. And I don't think they're going to turn around the trend here. The Jets played really well last week against Miami, but the Jags defense just isn't there. The Jets, I think, will be out Sauce Gardner, but all their receivers are going to be there. And I think those guys just want to win. I feel like they thought they were going to get one last week, but they just kind of got it stolen. Their fans probably want them to continue to lose. They can get a much higher draft pick. But at this point, Rodgers is playing for his legacy, or not legacy, but to show the league that he still has something left. He had his first 200-yard passing game last week. I expect the offense to continue to click against the Jaguar squad that can't really stop passing. I mean, last week they stopped Will Levis, but I mean, Rodgers is not Levis. He's having a much better season, even by his own standards, than Will Levis is. So I expected the Jets to blow him out. So take the Jets in the game.
I think not having Brees Hall is is definitely interesting and made things a little bit more intriguing for the Jets. But I completely agree with you here. I'm not locking them in, but I definitely think that the Jets have more than enough on their side of the football. Like they are a 3-10 team that if they had been playing to the potential of to the talent of the roster on this team, you're probably looking at a 6 to 7 win team. Whereas the Jaguars are 3-10 and it's a legitimate 3-10. Because they're just not they're not great defensively. They've got a few guys on that side of the football, but they don't have a great scheme. And then offensively, between Trevor Lawrence's being in and out due to injury, to Mac Jones having to step in from time to time and make some and lead this team as backup quarterback that nobody they probably didn't plan on ever playing. To just everybody with the exception, especially the offensive side of the ball, taking a step back. Even players like that the number one overall pick a couple of years ago, when the pass rusher that they drafted, guys just not living up to their full potential or living up to wherever their draft status has been, because Jacksonville, as we know, has drafted at the top of the draft for the better part of the last 10 years now. They haven't had much to show for it. So I think the Jets are just a better overall team here and should be playing much better. And to Ace's point, he's very, very right here. I think Aaron Rodgers is playing for his, not necessarily for his legacy, but for some respect to, be able to come back out and play next year if that's what he so chooses to do. So expect the Jets to cover this number here, get a victory, and put themselves back on the winning track because they absolutely need it. All right, over to the biggest point spread of the week, the biggest, most lopsided game of the week. We have the Baltimore Ravens, 8-5, going to the MetLife Stadium to face the 2-11 New York Football Giants. The Ravens are coming off of their bye week last week. And before that, they lost that interesting game on Sunday. I think it was Sunday Night Football to the Philadelphia Eagles. Meanwhile, the Giants have lost now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight. With their 14-11 loss against the Saints at home last week, where they got I think their field goal was blocked. It was either blocked or they missed it at the end of that game, which would have tied it. The Giants have been shifting around the quarterback situation. Obviously, Daniel Jones is no longer there. At first, it was DeVito, and the last couple of games has been Drew Lock. They just don't seem to have much from that perspective at all. So this number opened up on most sports books at around 16.5. It still sits at 16.5 at FanDuel, but some places have it hovering around 13.5, 14. So it's a pretty big swing, depending on the books you're looking at. But we're going to do it for minus 16.5. The Ravens and the Lamar Jackson machine coming off their bye, 16.5 point favorites against the Giants. Ace, what do you think?
Man, listen, Baltimore's going to beat the hell out of them. It's really whether or not you think they'll beat them by 7. This Giants team lost to Tampa 30-7. Now, this is the thing. Will they lose 30-10? I don't know. I will say this. I am definitely leaning towards picking Baltimore because the spread is almost 17 points. That's the only thing that's preventing me from locking it. They had to make this line this big just so they could get even action on it. And they're playing in New Jersey, where the Giants are at, the Giants home. Baltimore plays outdoors, so they're used to the bad weather. It's going to be cold, but the Giants literally score the least amount of points per game at 14.9, and Baltimore's the third highest scoring team in the league at 29.5. So if you literally just take the average and what they do, if this game is 30-14, that would be perfect. And then the Giants would somehow squeak out a half-point cover. I'm taking Baltimore. I'm not going to be putting this in any of my bets, but the Giants passing game is weak. Their rushing game is average. I think they're just going to run the ball and get the game over with quick. I don't think they look past the Giants. I think they just come out and get up on them by 21 points. And then it may just end up being like a 28-3 or a 28-7 game with a touchdown coming in. It could literally shut them out. So I'm taking Baltimore. I've already spent too much time discussing Saturdays.
Yeah, despite all the challenges that Baltimore's defense has had over the course of the season, it's all well documented. I completely agree. I don't think they're looking past the Giants at all because they're still 2 games behind the Pittsburgh Steelers for the division. They're a wild card team right now, but there's still an outside chance for them to get the division if they can get into contention against Pittsburgh. With Pittsburgh, we're going to be reviewing that game later, but the Ravens have every reason to come out and try to be clicking on all cylinders and making things happen and make a statement coming off of their bye. So I completely expect them to beat this and then to beat the Giants and to beat the Giants handily. And this is one of those games, just kind of talking about like this is one of those games where this is one of those games that loses you a parlay because you try to get cute and pick the Giants because they're getting 16.5 points. And you'll be winning everything else. And then you'll look and the Giants will be down, 27-3 with like 2
Exactly.
minutes left. And it was 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And you'll be praying for Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock to make some plays for you. And like just,
And that is not where you want to
and
be in life.
that's not where you want to be. If you have to play this game, just go ahead and take the Ravens. You'll feel better about yourself. Even if they wind up not covering this, even if it wind up being a backdoor cover for the Giants, you'll feel better about yourself saying, at least if I took the Ravens and they won by 14, sure, I lost, but you don't want to be the person sitting there taking the Giants because you're thinking you're cute, you get 16.5 points and they get beat 30-6. Like that's just not where you want to be, come Sunday afternoon. So take the Ravens. I'm not locking this in, but this looks like it's a pretty sure bet for Baltimore here. Colts at the Broncos. The Colts are 6-7 at the Broncos. This number has the Broncos favored by 3.5 points at home against these Colts. Quick note about this game. Indy is coming off of a victory. Indy's coming off of their bye as well. They had a victory. They won their last game against the Patriots by a score of 25-24. Meanwhile, the Broncos have won 3 straight after their field goal block loss to Kansas City. They beat the brakes off of the Atlanta Falcons. They beat the Raiders in Las Vegas, and they outlasted the Cleveland Browns last week in a game that saw a combined total of 73 points between those two teams. So they've shown the ability to score when necessary, and also shown the ability to defend and lock things down as their defense has been one of the tops in the league. So this is an interesting game. Both teams are in the playoff chase in the AFC. Indianapolis 6-7 is a couple of games out of the wild card position, and the Denver Broncos are squarely in there at 8-5. So this is a game they both want to win to kind of hold for in that situation. So Broncos, Colts. Broncos are 3.5 point favorites. The over/under is 44.5. Ace, what are you thinking?
I'm locking in the Broncos. I'm locking in the Colts. The Colts need this game to stay in it. This is an elimination game for them. Broncos are only beating bad teams, and the Colts aren't a bad team. And the fact that they were able to get some time off and rest came at the perfect time for them. They have the better running back. They have better linebackers. I believe they even have a better defensive line. The Anthony Richardson poses so many problems to the Broncos defense that I don't think they'll be able to solve. He's not an efficient quarterback, yet somehow he is always getting his team into positive plays and giving them an opportunity. The way they came back against the Patriots in New England and won that game by going for it and getting it and going for 2 just to ice the game. I believe more in just their variability because they're able to just hit super big home run shots in terms of like deep passes to score. So as long as their defense keeps them close, I'm going to be locking in the Colts to cover this game, and I could actually see them potentially win, depending on how it goes in the first half. Colts have a better rushing offense and similar passing numbers to that of the Broncos over the whole season. So we will see how that goes.
I hear you, Ace. I'm actually we're gonna go dueling locks here. I'm gonna lock it on the other side. And just to note for everybody listening, both of these teams are coming off of their bye. They are both on bye week 14. And Denver's game against Cleveland when they won that game was 2 weeks ago on the 2nd of December. So it was that first game, that first week of December. coming out of the Thanksgiving holiday. So they've been off as well. So both these teams are coming off their bye. Both these teams should be rested, should be fresh. And we still have seen, we've seen a little bit of good from Anthony Richardson and a little bit of bad from him since he's been reinserted back into the starting lineup. But one thing that we do know is that this team is a running team. They like to be physical. They like to get downhill, and the defense for the Broncos is waiting for that. They're going to want to force the ball into Anthony Richardson's hand, to force him to make plays with his arm down the field, force him to put the ball up and give them an opportunity to take the ball away and move it down the field. So at 3.5 points, I agree with you, Ace. The Broncos have been beating up on some bad teams and padding their record a little bit, but you got to play who's on your schedule, and they've handled business. And I never expected them to beat the Falcons the way that they did. When that happened, which probably says more about the Falcons, but whatever. So I like the Broncos here. I'm going to lock them in as my second lock of the week to cover at home 3.5 points, and I like the over for this game. I think both teams can get at or around 23 points. All right, 3-10 Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals at 6-7. The Patriots are another team, I believe, coming off of their bye. Yep, they are coming off of their bye. And they're going to the Arizona Cardinals, who last week they lost to the Seattle Seahawks and put themselves in a bind, to say the least, for getting themselves into the playoffs. They really, really needed that victory to kind of solidify things from the standpoint of the division, because more likely than not, with Philly, Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Tampa Bay pretty much locked, and Washington pretty much locked into their positions, it would be really, really hard for a second team coming out of the NFC West to make it into the playoffs. But Arizona still has obviously a fighting chance at 6-7. They host a 3-10, the 3-10 Patriots, who, again, like I've said for them for the last few weeks, have played pretty well but continue to lose games at a breakneck pace here, and don't look to be getting much better or getting much help over the course of this season. This is them playing, obviously, for the development of Drake May and that offense moving forward. So the Cardinals are 6.5 point favorites here. The over-under is 46.5. Ace, Patriots, Cardinals. What are you thinking?
This is an easy one. Lock in the Cardinals. They're going to beat the brakes off of them. This is the game that I feel the most confident about. Everything that the Cardinals do well pushes the Patriots' limits on defense, and they're going to be much more prepared to defend them, and the Patriots will be able to defend the Cardinals. They have a much better running game. Ramondre Stevenson is playing through some injuries, but he will be playing. I don't even think he's going to be at full strength. Patriots receivers, their best receiver is Hunter Henry. Trace McBride is the best receiver so far this season. They're tight end for Arizona. And Greg Dortch is actually going to create some matchup problems for the Patriots. They have one good corner, but he won't be able to follow anybody the entire game because they're going to be spreading the ball around. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to present some matchup problems for them. I just see the Cardinals being able to get going in this one. They didn't get going last week against Seattle. If they want a chance to stay in this division with the Rams currently losing, I think Arizona's definitely going to get this game, and I think if they win, they're going to win by more than 6 points. So I'm locking in the Cardinals on this.
Yeah, I agree here. I'm not locking them in, but I definitely agree. Both of these teams have lost 3 straight. So both of these teams will be looking to bounce back from recent losses. But the losses for Arizona are 2 against Seattle and 1 against Minnesota, and the 2 Seattle games were pretty handily, but the Minnesota game was one where, if you watch that game, they were in control pretty much the entire game, and they lost in the last second field goal situation. Whereas New England's, their loss has been to the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Rams. So I don't know, take what you will from that with respect to which team had the tougher road for the last 3. But I think you're right. I think Arizona is just the better overall team here. They're hosting. and it's 6.5 points. And so even though I don't particularly like what I'm seeing from the Cardinals and Kyler Murray and Kyler Murray in specifics over the last few weeks, I do think that they are much better than the Patriots and should be able to hold fort against them. And so long as they don't have to play anybody that's at or above their pay grade, they should finish out perfectly fine. So I'll take the Cardinals here as well. No lock, but I feel pretty good about that. All right. One of the games of the week, the Steelers at the Eagles. Steelers are 10-3, and they're going to Philadelphia to face the 11-2 Eagles. This is interesting for multiple reasons. Obviously we know, these two, Pennsylvania teams. These two teams have, always been compared to one another in the state. And there's not a lot of love lost between both these fan bases, even though they don't play in the same division, they don't play in the same conference, so they don't play each other very often. But there's clearly a level of disdain, a level of dislike between Eagles and Steelers fans. The Steelers are coming off of a win last week against who was that against? Against Cleveland. In that game at home against Cleveland. After their huge win against Cincinnati the week before, where they put up 44 points. Pittsburgh's just been able to show the ability to win in a lot of different ways. And Philly, while they have been winning and winning, pretty handily over the last, 8 straight now. That last game against Carolina and the game before that against Baltimore were both one-score games where you could have easily seen them lose, and they seem to not play, the type of ball that they're not bludgeoning teams, the way that people think that they should with the talent that they have. So right now this is a 5.5-point spread. The Eagles are favored at home by 5.5. The over/under is a pretty low 42.5 for this game. So Ace, what are you thinking? Eagles and Steelers. Eagles minus 5.5.
I'm leaning towards the Eagles right here. I think they have the better team. I know the coaching decisions are going to be very questionable from them, but even though they haven't been winning by a lot, they have been winning. They win this game, they're going to win by a lot, not by a little. Everybody would say that the Steelers' defense is better. I would say that the Eagles' defense is much younger and they're actually faster. They have better coverage and they have better defensive backs. So with George Pickens out there, he's kind of the only person you need to be scared of in terms of, receivers for the Steelers. And I don't think the Steelers have a better run game. So with Saquon Barkley, I think that kind of changes the math on all of this. And this may be a low scoring game, but if the Eagles win, which I do believe they will because they're at home, they're going to cover. So that's the reason why I'm going with the Eagles. They don't turn the ball over a lot either. So even though Jalen Hurts may be stealing a bunch of rushing touchdowns, like if they get down there and if they have to worry about Saquon, who has 1,600 yards with 4 games to go, I think it's going to be an issue because the Eagles they just have a better overall in terms of talent. They have a better offensive line. It's just, do I worry about Sirianni making a dumbass decision at some point in the second half that just ruined this game for that team? But I think this is the game of the week on Fox. So CBS
Yes, it
has a
is.
different game there's 2 really good matchups for the 4 p.m. slate on this.
Yep. And we'll be
I'm
getting to that
generally
next
going
one
to be
soon.
enjoying that. But I'm taking the Eagles. I like Russell. I like the fact that he's literally played his way back to being a first ballot Hall of Famer. The Steelers are leading the AFC North. Tomlin is an amazing coach. 18 straight years with the winning record, without a losing record. And it's just super impressive. But I think they're going to get their 4th loss. And I think the Eagles are going to lock up the division with their 12th win. So yeah, give me the Birds.
Yeah, as much as I want to disagree with you, because I want the Eagles to, to lose a couple of games to get off the Lions' back in terms of that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Kind of agree here as well. I don't think this supposed rift between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts and all that stuff. I think that's much ado about nothing. Personally, I think on the field they can figure it out. They'll throw when they need to throw, and just frankly speaking, they just haven't had to in a long time because Saquon Barkley's been that amazing, has been that good for them, and they haven't had to throw a ton, and they haven't asked Jalen Hurts to, be Superman on most occasions, which has worked out really, really, really well for them. I agree. The Steelers have been very, very impressive at this point of the season, but George Pickens still isn't practicing, and I think that's a huge, huge loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And even though they were able to win against Cleveland last week, I think that's just good. That if Pickens can't play, he's literally their best and the most talented receiver that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, and their running game has not been great with Najee Harris or Jalen Warren over the course of this season. So I like the Eagles to get this and cover this number. I think this number is actually pretty low. Figuring out how well they are able to score the football, and though Pittsburgh's defense is a good defense, it's not the steel curtain like people have been trying to give it props for. So I definitely think that the Eagles should be able to win this game outright. The only thing that scares me here, and I don't know if it scares you, but you mentioned Nick Sirianni. I'm going to mention on the other side Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin just knows how to get the best and squeeze the most out of his team, and get them to play the best version of themselves in the biggest possible situation. So I could absolutely see a cover here, but I'm going to lock in the Eagles -5.5. That brings us to the next game that Ace was teasing up a little bit. The 10-3 Buffalo Bills going to my 12-1 Detroit Lions. This is the CBS game of the week, 425 slate with Mr. Tony Romo on the call. The Lions are 2.5-point favorites here at home, hosting a Bills team that lost probably one of the most interesting, back and forth games you'll ever see, with 42-44 loss against these Rams who are playing on Thursday Night Football. Josh Allen had 6 touchdowns total, three through the air and 3 on the ground. And the team just, offensively looked like they could not be stopped. Problem was on the defensive side of the ball, they couldn't stop anything that the Rams were trying to do against them. So specifically Matt Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp, who just lit them up. Buffalo, going into that game last week, had won, I think, 8 straight coming into that game. So that win derailed their chances at getting themselves to a number 1 seed. So now they're exactly 2 games behind the Kansas City Chiefs in that regard, even though they have the victory over them. Meanwhile, the Lions just keep on figuring out ways to win. 14 or 18 injured defenders on the IR, and they're bringing guys off the street. Jamal Adams, Quan Alexander, anybody and everybody who can be called in to come and play, they've been calling them in, but they keep figuring out ways to win. And whether it's a, crazy, gutsy 4th down play call by Dan Campbell, or, dynamic offensive performance by Ben Johnson in that offensive system, the Lions have just been doing it. They've been doing it, and they've been doing it in a bunch of different ways and figuring out ways to win. I'll pick this game first, since this is the squad that I root for the closest, and I'm pretty good picking the Lions here. Picking the Lions this season. One thing, the Lions seem to be getting a little healthier. Last week we lost Ali McNeil during the game. He was in the concussion protocol, but has been back over the course of this week. In addition to that, Levi Onwuzurike has been returning to practice. Josh Paschal and DJ Reader both practiced in full today. So it looks like that defensive line is going to be, about as healthy, as intact as it could possibly be, without Aiden Hutchinson there. And with that, I think that's the thing. That's the thing that's going to allow me to pick the Lions to cover this game against the Bills. 2.5 points is a lot of points. There's a hook here. I think that the Lions can definitely can and should win this game by 3. I can see this game going 34-31, very similar to the Packers game from a week ago. I think Josh Allen is going to do some amazing things. He's going to make some amazing plays. But I think he's going to test the waters with the Lions secondary. And I think the Lions get him at least once in this game. So I like the Lions to cover this number, -2.5. The over-under here is a humongously high, 54.5 points. So it doesn't expect any defense to be played on either side. So I like the Lions and the over, and I'm locking this in for my fourth lock of the week. Ace, what are you thinking?
I'm locking in Detroit. Give me the Lions. The Bills can't beat anybody who's any good, so the Lions are easily going to win this
one. All right.
This will be their fourth loss this year. They've only beaten up on bad teams. The best team they've beaten is Kansas City, and they had them at home. All their losses have been on the road, so expect another one.
All right. Buccaneers at Chargers. This is another sneaky game. Both teams are over 500. The Bucs are leading their division, 7-6 in the NFC South. And the Chargers, despite losing last week to the Kansas City Chiefs in a very close game, they are, despite actually losing 2 straight, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they've lost their last. They won their game before that. They are 8-5, and still very, very much in the thick of things for the playoffs, for a wild card slot in the playoffs. So these two teams are, like I said, sneaky good matchup between these two teams. Both of them, looking like they'll be, participants in their respective playoffs. The Chargers have been winning. I've been saying this for a few weeks now. The Chargers have been winning ugly. They don't throw the ball very much. They don't score a lot of points. Justin Herbert, looks like a quarterback that's just not being asked to do a whole bunch. They're handing the football off. They're winning with their running game and defense. They're doing exactly what Jim Harbaugh wants them to do. And the Buccaneers on the other side, this is the Bake Show. Baker Mayfield, they win and they lose with Baker Mayfield and whatever he's able to do, whatever heroics he's able to pull out, whatever game he's able to have. So if he's having a great game, most likely the Buccaneers are having a great game. And if he's not, then the Chargers then whoever their opponent is going to be that week is holding fort. And that's what kind of makes them a middle of the pack, middle of the road type of team that can beat you on any Sunday, but also can lose to you on any Sunday as well. So the Chargers here are 3-point favorites. They're getting the standard 3-point home treatment here. The over-under in this game is 45.5. Ace, I'm going to start with you on this one. Buccaneers and Chargers cross-conference matchup. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm locking in the Bucs. They're an easy win on this one for me. Without J.K. Dobbins, they haven't been able to run the ball. He's still on IR, so I don't think the Chargers are going to be able to generate much of an offense. Their best receiver is a dude named Ladd. And I'm not a big believer in betting on rookie receivers, even though I took a bunch of them in my fantasy team. That has generally not worked out for me, so I'm leaning on the veterans here with Baker to Evans for a couple of TDs and some wins. So give me the Bucs on the road getting 3. Last lock of the week.
I like this. I like this lock. I like the Bucs here as well. I think I'm going to go with the Chargers just because they're the home team, and I do think they are the better team. But also the Buccaneers, although they've been getting healthy, they will be without Antoine Winfield for this game. He's not going to be playing due to a knee issue. In addition to that, there's a chance that Bucky Irving, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' best running back over the course of the season, won't be there as well. So you'll have to monitor that. Meanwhile, the Chargers are going to get back Ladd McConkey, who's been their best receiver, has been a little bit of a star receiver over the past, over this season, his first season in the league. They'll be getting him back, which means things should open up a little bit more for Justin Herbert and that passing game, because they literally rely on McConkey to do just pretty much everything in that offense without much explosive players on the other side, on that side of the football for them. So I like the Chargers. I'll give the home 3. I think they win this out. I think they win this by 3 or 4. I actually think this might just be a push, honestly, for these two, this game. And I could absolutely see this, finishing up like, 24-21. So I'll just take the Chargers on the other side and see if we get a push. All right. Packers at Seahawks. This is the Sunday night football game. The Packers are 9-4, heading to Seattle to face the Seahawks. The Packers are coming off of that brutal loss against the Lions last week on Thursday Night Football. And the Seahawks are coming off their win and sweeping the Arizona Cardinals and putting themselves in pole position for the NFC West title. Both of these teams look to be right in the thick of the playoff situation, and this could be a week one wild card matchup if things play out the way that they expected to, with the Packers being the team with probably the better record, having to go on the road to play against the Seahawks team that won their division. Geno's been playing pretty well. Jordan Love and the Packers have been playing pretty well. Coming into this game, this is another really, really interesting matchup for Sunday Night Football, and should be interesting for both of these teams because they'll know by the time that they start their game, they'll know what happened in front of them in the division with pretty much every team with the exception of the Monday Night Football game between the Bears and the Vikings, which we will get to. But Packers are 9-4, and they are favored by 2.5 points going to the 12s in Seattle. I'll take the first swing at this one. I really, really, really like the Seahawks in this game. And I don't necessarily think that they're the better team. I think these teams are relatively even. But I do think that these two teams, I do think that the Seattle Seahawks getting points at home, having won 4 straight, getting points, with the 12s, that they're going to be able to, at the very least, make this game really, really close and put this game in a situation where, the Packers either have to win by a short field goal or something along those lines to get them like a 2-point victory or something from there. But I could absolutely see the Seahawks pulling this game out. So I'm going to take the Seahawks, and I like the points here. I'll take the Seahawks, and I am not going to lock this in. I have 2 locks left, which I'm using on the last 2 games here. But I like the Seahawks getting 2.5 points. Ace, what are you thinking?
I'm taking the Seahawks as well. I'm riding along with you on that one. You've said everything pretty much that can be about the game. But I just think they have a better defense and they're at home getting points, so I love them.
Yeah, it just feels right. Even though the Packers might win the game, it just feels right that the Seahawks here should be the pick. All right, Bears at the Vikings. The Chicago Bears are 4-9, still not mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, but all things considered, they're probably done. But they've just been a really, really interesting thing. They lost really bad last week against San Francisco in San Francisco. But before that, their losses before that in the division, they were really, really close losses. They absolutely could have won that game against the Minnesota Vikings, at home a few weeks ago. They absolutely could have won that game against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving when they came all the way back from being down in the first half. They absolutely could have won that game against the Green Bay Packers before that when they played against them. So to me, the Vikings being favored by 7 points against a Bears team that has played, pretty much their best football of the season in these divisional matchups just seems like another weird spread to me. So I'm locking in the Bears, and I don't really have much to say. I'm going to leave this up to Ace to kind of dig in on the flip side of this. But I'm locking in the Bears. I think that they can absolutely cover this number, if not get a close win. I like this for them, so I'm taking the Bears and I'm locking this in. But Ace, I'll leave it to you to kind of to go to do a quick deep dive on this one.
Okay. So, the Bears are going on the road. They've been good in domes. They played all the teams close. The last game they lost was the one where Eberflus did not call a timeout. The close game that they lost to them was before this one. They have a better defense. Caleb Williams has been handling the rush better. Their line has been playing kind of average, so-so. But I do think that they're going to be the better team here. And the fact that they're getting 7 points, I expect the Bears to cover. But more than that, honestly, I think the head coach is a bit inexperienced. He's great at calling the offense, but they have yet to really be able to figure out the defense, still with the injuries and safety concussion to Brisker and a few other players. I think that's really what's holding them back. Byard's been doing okay, but He hasn't been good enough in terms of the coverage on the tight ends. They got destroyed last week by Kittle, and I think that's just a fatal flaw in the defense. So because they have Hawkinson for them in Minnesota, I think the Bears are just going to cover on this one, but I don't expect them to win, to be honest. So I'm taking the Bears +7.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're in the same boat there. Just kind of leaning towards the Bears covering this number and being and playing. They've just been playing well. I mean, they've been playing good, hard football, and I think the 7 points is a little bit disrespectful given what they've been able to accomplish, especially against teams in their own divisions, even on the road. All right, that brings us to the last game of the slate. The other Monday Night Football game features the Atlanta Falcons, 6-7, at Las Vegas to take on the 2-11 Las Vegas Raiders. The Falcons are favored here by 3.5 points. The over/under is 44.5. Look, Atlanta's not looking good. Has not looked good for the past few weeks, and they got their boats. They got boat raced by the Vikings a week ago in Minnesota. They've lost 4 straight, and they haven't looked great doing it. Meanwhile, Vegas has lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight, and have not been able to have not been doing well at covering spreads either. This has just been a really, really interesting season for them, really low season, but not something that wasn't expected for them walking into this season without a quarterback situation. The Falcons have been the real disappointment here. This is a real disappointing game overall, so I think this is just going to be it's an interesting one because you just don't know what you're going to get with the Falcons. You don't know what kind of team they're going to come out. So being 3.5 point favorites in this situation is scary, even against the Raiders. But Falcons at Raiders, 3.5 points favorite to the Falcons. Who do you think, Ace?
Falcons are going to crush the Raiders. The Raiders don't have much of a hope. They have one good defensive player that they refuse to trade, but aside from that, they're going to be fine. But Atlanta's going to crush them. They just have too many weapons on offense. Even though the defense is average, they should be able to squeak out a bad win over this team.
Yeah, I'm agreeing here. The Falcons, and this is my last lock of the week. The Falcons, as bad as they have been over the course of the season, and as up and down as they've been, like they've looked really, really bad, and then they've looked really, really good. This is one of those games where they could look really, really good, and everybody will be back on the bandwagon, especially if the Chargers figure out a way to beat the Buccaneers on Sunday. Then both of these teams will be looking at. Then Atlanta and Tampa will be completely tied for the NFC South division, with Atlanta being 2-0 against the Bucs, so they would actually have the mathematical advantage with the tiebreaker there. So, like I said, as bad as the Falcons have played, they're still very, very much in the race for the NFC South, and should they win this game this week, what's expected of them, they'll be right back where they need to be in terms of being able to host a game in Atlanta for the playoffs. So. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in as well. The Falcons getting this victory. So there you have it, folks. 15 games picked and 6 locks locked in. Ace has the Bengals, the Jets, the Colts, the Cardinals, the Lions, and the Buccaneers. And I have the Bengals, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Lions, the Bears, and the Falcons. Those are our locks for the week. Hopefully you guys, make some pretty good money with this. If we get Ant's picks and Levon's picks, we'll add them into our spread, and we'll post those locks for you on some of our socials if we get a chance to do that. If not, those are our picks. Before we roll out of here, last but not least, let's hand it over to a shout out. So Ace, start with you.
Yeah, also check us out on the blog. I'll be uploading the spreadsheets with the updated defensive and offensive numbers for the team, offense and defense, yards per play, air yard. Well, actually, with the advanced stats somewhere else. We're going to have the basic stats for you guys. That's what I've had access to through the Python stuff that I've been doing in my part time since I've been off in December, taking care of these kids. But shout out to all the parents who are, taking time off to take care of their newborns. Shout out to my New York Knicks winning their division in the NBA Cup, somehow losing to the Atlanta Falcons. Tired of them giving them hope. I know the Hawks are not a good team. Said it about the Hawks. Hawks are genuinely not a good team. They're somehow the only franchise that has ruined two superstars. Instead of drafting Luka, they took Trae Young. So we know they don't make good decisions in terms of long-term planning. They do seem to have a good player in Jalen. I think it's Jalen Johnson. He's been a star. He kind of just outplayed Miles Bridges yesterday. And that's why they're able to get the win. Jalen Brunson hasn't been bringing it, but hopefully for the second half of the season, they will be playing a lot better. So I'm having faith in my Nets. And shout out to the WNBA and my college for making it to the Bahamas Bowl. University of Buffalo 8-4. That's a real win for them. Shout out to those guys. And also the college football playoffs. I'm really enjoying that. We're gonna get into that next week. And this has been a really fun NFL season. So I hope everybody's enjoying the holidays. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Chanukah. Everybody loves to play that old clip from the I think it was from Smokey Robinson a couple of years ago. Joe Garcia. Yeah, man, it should be happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy, your time off. You have some and just watch holiday lights and going to Christmas parties and drinking eggnog and all that good stuff. Yeah.
All right. And for me, just a couple of quick shout outs here. Number one, shout
Oh
out
yeah,
to
and
go
fuck
ahead.
the Mets. Fuck the Mets.
Look,
Fuck the Mets.
I was actually gonna say, well, shout out to the Yankees. They bounced back from the losing out on the Juan Soto sweepstakes here, and they were able to shore up the best pitcher, the best available pitcher in the free agent market, Max Fried, who was the lefty ace here that played for the Atlanta Braves. They were able to lock him up. Within like 24 hours after losing out on the Juan Soto situation. And they've been playing, they've been playing the game the best they possibly could. The most that you can do is, hope that your team, comes to the plate and does, what they can to make the pitch that they want to make to the player and offers and gets into the game. And they did that. They offered the man 16 years, $760 million, and he took 765 from the Mets across the town. I hope that he enjoys it. I hope that he, recognizes. Obviously, he recognizes that the level of expectations there are much different from the level of expectations here on the other side in the Bronx. And I hope he enjoys being a footnote, because when the Mets aren't good, nobody talks about them. And so he's going to be over there making $50 million a year. And if that team isn't really, really successful, and they play in a really, really difficult division in the AL East, they're going to be a footnote in the New York media, because the only people that talk about the Mets are Met fans. But you know what? All power to them. I would have, I would have both loved and hated to hear LeVon complain about the $50 million guy, Juan Soto, whenever he strikes out or whenever he doesn't make a play, and hear LeVon talk about how much we're paying this guy. So I'm glad that I don't have to hear that for the next 15 years of my life. If that's any consolation. Shout out to the Detroit Lions, organizationally here. I mean, aside 12 wins and 12-1 and great season aside, did you see, Ace? Did you see this altercation that the Lions fan had with LaFleur at the beginning of the game, beginning of the
Yeah, that was
Packers
kind
game?
of wild, man. Like, why was he on the field? Why was he that close to them? That
Well,
seems kind of wild.
he was on the field because he was one of the fans. A lot of teams do this. They for their season ticket holders, teams will select a group of their season ticket holders to come out and hold the American flag during the national anthem. Every team does this. It's one of the perks of being a season ticket holder. And so this guy in particular decided to take it upon himself to, start talking trash to the opposing team's head coach. And I'm sure this is not the first time that's happened. It's probably not the first time an opposing team's, fan has said some wild stuff to the coach. But it's the first time that the coach actually responded, got pissed off, and started trying to bring him to smoke. Well, the Lions turned around and did the right thing. They revoked this guy's season tickets, and they made a public apology to Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers as a result of it. There's no place in the game for that. You're there to be a fan. You're there to enjoy and cheer on your team. You're not there to create any conflict, the BS with the opposing team's coaches or players on the sideline. And it's just not it's not worth it. So hopefully, even though you lost out on your season tickets, hopefully you'll still be able to get single game seats. But you've lost out on the privilege of being able to do things that season ticket holders can do, which is really cool. Which is really cool for the Lions to do that. Last but not least, shout out to all of the teams that made the inaugural college football playoff. There was a lot of talk, a lot of controversy around some of the teams that made it in. I know I had my things to say about the University of Clemson at the beginning of the season. They made it into the 12, even though I don't think they should have been in the 12. They made it into the 12. They won the ACC. Give them the credit where the credit is due. And teams like SMU and others have bounced out. Blue bloods like Alabama and Miami, so just having these teams in the college football playoff and having some of those teams out is probably what the committee and folks were looking for. It may not bring up the most intriguing games, but it definitely is going to make things very, very fun. But the fact of the matter that, Ace, this was hilarious to me when I looked at it. Oregon is the number one team in the country. They're the number one team in the college football playoff. And they're going to be forced to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. And like the number four team, but what's hilarious is like the number
they just got to run the ball
team,
on like Michigan did. They'll be all right.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like the number 4 team, if I'm not mistaken, the number 4 team, Boise, was the number 3 team. Boise State has their bye. And they're going to get to play the winner of SMU and Penn State.
I think this is karma for all those years where they kept them out of the national championship game, where they had like 2 years back to back where they went undefeated. And now they have a guy who's ran 2,400 yards in a season in the national game. They're finally getting awarded. So karma, baby, karma.
It's just great. Meanwhile, Georgia is going to face like the winner of Indiana. Like the number 1 seed is supposed to have the easiest path to victory, to get in there. This is how it's typically done in every playoff. But it seems like in this playoff, it's going to be the complete opposite, because Oregon is going to get a tough game out of the gate once they come out of their bye, either Tennessee or Ohio State. And I just think that's funny in how things have been seeded. But shout out to them for putting this together. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. People talk about it, they complain about it and everything. But shout out to them because it's been it's been an interesting season. Last but not least, I don't know if you guys have seen, but shout out to Mr. Dick Vitale. He has announced just recently again that he is cancer free. He's been going through this battle for some years now. The 85-year-old man, basketball phenom, basketball announcer extraordinaire. Loved him, listened to him for years. And on the week where ESPN is doing their V Foundation and taking donations to help out with cancer research, to hear that he is now, clear of cancer and, resting and doing well, is just incredible to hear. So shout out to Dick Vitale. And hopefully, to some degree, he's able to continue to contribute to the college basketball landscape as he's done for like 50 years, which is just incredible. And with that, we're out. Peace, everybody.
Peace.